When the cold settles in and the snow stacks up against the door, there's nothing to do but stay inside and try to keep warm. Nights like these have a way of making the world feel smaller, quieter, and a whole lot stranger. So bundle up, settle in, and let me tell you a few stories that will chill you far more than the winter wind.
My name is Ben, and I'm a snowplow driver in upstate New York. I've been doing this job for 12 years, working the night shift when most people are safe at home. What happened to me last February still keeps me up at night. It was around 2 a.m., and I was clearing Route 47, a long stretch of highway that cuts through empty farmland. The storm was bad that night. Visibility was almost zero, snow coming down in thick sheets. I'd been plowing for 6 hours straight. That's when I saw the car in the ditch. It was a sedan, nose first in the snowbank, hazard lights still blinking. I pulled over and grabbed my flashlight. Protocol says to check for people first, then call it in. I approached the car and shined my light inside. Empty. Driver's door was open, keys still in the ignition, engine cold. Whoever had been driving was long gone. I was about to radio it in when I noticed something. Footprints leading away from the car, heading across the field toward a line of trees about 100 yards out. Single set of prints. They looked fresh. I should have just called the police. That's what I was supposed to do, but something made me follow those tracks. Maybe I thought someone was hurt and needed help. The snow was deep, and walking was hard. I kept my flashlight pointed at the footprints, following them across the empty field. They went straight, never wavering, like the person knew exactly where they were going. When I reached the tree line, the prints continued into the woods. That's when I noticed something strange. The prints going in were clear. But there were no prints coming back out. I stood there, shining my light into the dark woods. Hello? Anyone out here? Are you hurt? Nothing. I took a few steps in. The trees were thick, blocking most of the snow. It was quieter here, too quiet. I followed the tracks deeper. They went on for maybe 50 feet, then just stopped. Right in the middle of a small clearing. No sign of anyone. No other tracks. They just ended, like the person had vanished into thin air. I swept my flashlight around, nothing but trees and snow. Then I heard it. A voice, distant, calling for help. Help me, please. It was coming from deeper in the woods. I shouted back. Where are you? Keep talking so I can find you. I'm lost. I can't see. Please help me. I pushed forward, following the voice. It sounded like a woman, scared and desperate. But as I walked, something felt off. The voice never got closer. It stayed at the same distance no matter how far I went. I stopped. Something wasn't right. Where are you? I called out again. Right here, the voice answered. Can't you see me? But the voice was behind me now. I spun around, shining my light. Nothing. Just my own footprints in the snow. I'm right here, the voice said again. This time it was to my left. My chest tightened. I started backing away, trying to retrace my steps. Don't leave me, the voice said. Closer now, almost next to me. Please don't leave me out here alone. I broke into a run, crashing through the snow and branches. I didn't look back. I just ran toward where I thought the field was. When I finally burst out of the trees, I stopped to catch my breath. My truck was visible in the distance, lights still flashing. I'd only been in the woods for maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. I looked back at the tree line, and that's when I saw her. A woman stood at the edge of the woods, barely visible in the falling snow. She wore a thin dress, no coat, and her hair hung wet against her face. She was staring right at me. Please, she called out. I'm so cold. Every instinct told me to run, but she looked so real, so desperate. I took a step toward her. Are you from the car? She smiled. Yes. I've been waiting. Will you help me? I moved closer. She didn't move, just stood there smiling, snow piling on her shoulders. When I got within 10 feet, I saw her eyes. They were wrong, empty, like looking into a frozen pond. I stopped. "Who are you?" Her smile widened. "I've been here a long time. So many people drive by, but you're the first one who came looking." I backed away slowly. She took a step forward. "Don't you want to help me?" Her voice changed, became hollow, angry. "Everyone always drives past. No one ever stops." I turned and ran. I heard her behind me, footsteps crunching in the snow, getting faster. I didn't look back. I just ran as hard as I could toward my truck. I reached it, jumped in, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel. I looked in my side mirror. She was standing in the middle of the road, watching me. I hit the gas and got out of there. The next day, I reported the abandoned car. Police searched the woods where I'd been. They found something. An old grave marker, half buried and covered in moss. It was from 1987. A woman named Catherine Moore. She'd died in a car accident on Route 47 during a snowstorm. Her body was found 3 days later in the woods. She'd tried to walk for help, but froze to death. I quit that route, asked to be reassigned to different roads. My name is David, and I need to tell you what happened last February before I lose the nerve. I was house-sitting for my aunt in rural Vermont. She'd gone to Florida for a month, and I needed somewhere quiet to finish my thesis. The house was old, built in the 1890s, but solid. Wood-burning stove, thick stone walls, surrounded by woods on 3 sides. The nearest neighbor was 2 miles down the road. The first week was fine, peaceful even. I'd wake up, make coffee, write until my eyes hurt. At night, I'd feed the stove and read until I fell asleep. Simple. Then the snow started. It snowed for 3 days straight. Heavy, wet snow that piled up past the windows. By the 3rd night, I was completely snowed in. No phone signal. Internet had gone out. The power was still on, but I knew that could go any time. That's when I heard the knocking. It started around midnight. 3 slow knocks on the front door. I assumed it was a branch or ice falling from the roof. I ignored it. Then it happened again. 3 knocks, same rhythm. I got up and looked through the peephole. Nothing but white darkness and falling snow. I opened the door anyway. The cold hit me like a fist. The porch was empty. Fresh snow covered everything. No footprints, no tracks, nothing. I shut the door and locked it. The knocking came again 10 minutes later, this time from the back door. My stomach dropped. The back door faced nothing but woods. No path. No reason for anyone to be back there, especially in this weather. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, trying to convince myself it was the house settling or the wind. But the wind doesn't knock in threes. The wind doesn't move from door to door. At 2 a.m., I heard it at my bedroom window. 3 knocks, patient, deliberate. I was on the 2nd floor. I couldn't move. I just stared at that window, watching the curtain, waiting for something to appear. The knocking stopped. Silence filled the room, thick and wrong. Then I heard it. Footsteps in the attic above me, slow, heavy, walking from one end to the other. My aunt's attic was locked. She'd told me she hadn't been up there in years. The footsteps stopped directly above my bed. I grabbed my phone, no signal, and ran downstairs. I fed the stove, turned on every light, and sat on the couch with a kitchen knife, watching the ceiling. The footsteps started again, this time moving toward the attic door. I heard the door creak open, then footsteps on the stairs, coming down. I should have run. But the snow was too deep. The roads were buried. There was nowhere to go. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. I sat there, frozen, staring at the darkness of the hallway, waiting. Nothing came around the corner. But I heard breathing, right behind the wall, inches from where I sat. When morning came, I checked every room, every closet, every corner. Nothing. But in the attic, the door was open, and in the fresh dust on the floor, there were footprints, bare feet, human-sized, walking in circles. I left that house the moment the snowplows came through. My aunt asked why I didn't stay the full month. I told her I got sick. She sold the house 6 months later without ever asking what I really saw. And I know, somehow, that whatever was in that house is still waiting for someone to come back. My name is Sarah, and I'm telling you this because nobody believed me when I tried to explain what happened. Last January, I took a job as a caretaker for an elderly man named Mr. Henshaw. He lived alone in a cabin in the Scottish Highlands, about 40 minutes from the nearest village. His daughter hired me because he refused to leave, even though he could barely walk anymore. She said he'd lived there for 50 years and wouldn't budge. The cabin was small but well kept. Mr. Henshaw was quiet, polite, and mostly kept to himself. He'd sit by the window for hours, just staring out at the snow-covered hills. I'd cook, clean, help him with his medicine. Easy work. But he had one rule that seemed odd. Never go outside after dark, he told me on my first day. Not even to the porch. Not for any reason. I asked why. He just shook his head and said, "There are things that come down from the hills when the sun goes down." I thought he was just old and superstitious. Maybe a bit confused. The first 2 weeks passed without incident. I followed his routine, kept the fire going, made sure he ate. Every evening, just before sunset, he'd lock both doors himself. He'd check them twice. Then he'd close all the curtains, even though we were miles from anyone. "Don't look outside at night," he'd say, "even if you hear something." I didn't understand, but I didn't argue. Then one night, I woke up around 3 a.m. needing water. As I walked through the dark living room, I heard something outside. Singing. A woman's voice. Soft and sweet, like a lullaby. It sounded close, right outside the window. I stopped. My hand was on the curtain before I remembered what Mr. Henshaw had said, but curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it back just an inch. A woman stood in the snow about 10 feet from the house. She wore a thin white dress, no coat, no shoes. Her hair hung long and dark. She wasn't moving, just standing there in the freezing cold, singing that same melody. But her face, I couldn't see her face, not because it was dark, because it was wrong, blurred, like looking at someone through frosted glass. She stopped singing. Then slowly she turned toward the window. Toward me. I dropped the curtain and stepped back, my heart hammering. I heard footsteps in the snow, coming closer. They stopped right outside the window. Then came a whisper, so close it sounded like it was inside the room. "Let me in. I'm so cold." I didn't move, didn't breathe. The whisper came again, this time at the door. "Please, let me in." The doorknob started to turn, slowly, testing, but Mr. Henshaw had locked it. I heard scratching, long, deliberate scratches against the wood, then more footsteps circling the cabin, moving to each window, each door, trying them all. "Let me in, let me in, let me in." The voice was at every window now, multiple voices, all saying the same thing. Some sounded like women, some like children. One sounded like my mother. I ran to Mr. Henshaw's room. He was awake, sitting up in bed, his face pale. "You looked, didn't you?" he whispered. I nodded. "Then don't open anything. No matter what you hear, no matter who you think it is." The scratching grew louder, violent. The voices became screams. I heard something climb onto the roof, heavy thuds, scraping. Something was trying to get in through the chimney. Mr. Henshaw grabbed my hand. "They'll stop at dawn. They always do." We sat there in the dark for 3 hours, the screaming, the scratching, the voices of people I knew, begging to be let inside. When the sun finally rose, everything stopped. Silence. I opened the curtain. The snow around the cabin was disturbed, dozens of tracks all circling the house. But they didn't lead anywhere. They just stopped, as if whatever made them had simply vanished. I left that morning. Mr. Henshaw didn't try to stop me. He just nodded and said, "You lasted longer than the others." I never went back. I work as a delivery driver in northern Canada. What happened to me last winter made me quit that job, and I haven't driven through those woods since. It was mid-February, around 9 p.m., and I had one last delivery to make. A small package going to a farmhouse about 30 miles outside of town. The GPS took me down a narrow road I'd never been on before, cutting through dense forest. Snow was coming down hard, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. I'd been driving for about 20 minutes when I saw someone standing on the side of the road. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old. He wore a red winter coat and stood perfectly still, facing the trees. I slowed down. What was a kid doing out here alone at night in a snowstorm? I stopped the van and rolled down my window. "Hey, are you okay? Are you lost?" He didn't move, didn't turn around, just stood there staring into the woods. I called out again, louder this time. Nothing. I put the van in park and got out, leaving the engine running. The cold hit me immediately. The snow was ankle deep and still falling. "Kid, can you hear me? Where are your parents?" As I got closer, I noticed something odd. There were no footprints around him. The snow was completely undisturbed except for where I was walking. I reached out to touch his shoulder. "Hey, are you?" He turned around. His face was blue, frozen. His eyes were open but glazed over like ice. His mouth hung slightly open and frost covered his lips. I stumbled backward, falling into the snow. The boy didn't blink, didn't breathe. He just stared at me with those dead eyes. Then he spoke. His voice was hollow, like wind through a tunnel. "Why didn't you stop?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. "Why didn't you stop?" he repeated, louder. I scrambled to my feet and ran back to the van. I jumped inside, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I looked back at where the boy had been standing. He was gone. I sat there, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Then I heard tapping on the passenger window. The boy was standing right there, his frozen face pressed against the glass. "Why didn't you stop?" I screamed and hit the gas. The van lurched forward, tires spinning in the snow before finally catching. I didn't look back. I just drove as fast as I could. But then I saw him again, standing in the road ahead. Same spot, same position. I swerved to avoid him and nearly crashed into a tree. When I looked in the rearview mirror, he was standing in the middle of the road behind me, watching. I kept driving. My heart felt like it was going to explode. The road seemed endless, just trees and snow and darkness. Then I saw another figure, on the left side of the road this time. A woman in a nightgown, then another person up ahead. An old man, then more. Dozens of them. All standing along the roadside, all frozen, all staring. They didn't move. They just watched me pass. And as I drove by each one, I heard the same whisper inside the van. "Why didn't you stop?" I don't know how long I drove. It felt like hours. Eventually, the figures disappeared, and I found myself back on the main highway. I never made that delivery. I drove straight home and didn't leave my apartment for 3 days. Later, I looked up that road online. Turns out it's been closed for 5 years after multiple accidents. A school bus crashed there in 2019 during a blizzard. 12 people died, including 6 children. The road was considered too dangerous and was officially shut down. But my GPS had taken me right through it. When I checked the route history on my phone, there was no record of that road. According to the app, I'd driven straight through without stopping. I quit my job the next week. Now I work in a warehouse, no deliveries, no night shifts, and I never drive through the woods after dark. Because I know now that some roads don't show up on maps, and the people standing on them aren't looking for help. They're looking for company. My name is Jake, and I'm a park ranger in Colorado. I've worked in the mountains for 8 years, and I've seen a lot of strange things. But nothing prepared me for what happened last January. We'd had a massive snowstorm that shut down most of the park. My job was to check the cabins and make sure no one was stranded. Most people had evacuated before the storm hit, but we always had to be sure. I was checking the last cabin on my list, about 6 miles up the mountain trail. It was late afternoon, and the sun was already starting to drop. I knew I had maybe 2 hours of daylight left. When I reached the cabin, I noticed smoke coming from the chimney. Someone was inside. I knocked on the door. Park ranger, just checking to make sure everyone's okay. I heard movement inside, then the door opened. A man stood there, maybe in his 60s, with a thick beard and tired eyes. "I'm fine," he said, "just waiting out the storm." I asked if he needed anything. He shook his head and started to close the door, but then he stopped. "Actually," he said quietly, "have you seen a girl out here? Maybe 10 years old, blonde hair, blue coat." My stomach tightened. "No." "Is someone missing?" He looked past me, scanning the tree line. "My granddaughter. She was with me yesterday. We were building a snowman right there." He pointed to a spot in front of the cabin. I went inside to make hot chocolate, and when I came back out, she was gone. I've been searching ever since. I immediately radioed it in. A missing child in this weather was an emergency. I asked him when he'd last seen her, what direction she might have gone. He seemed confused, like he couldn't remember details clearly. "I've been calling for her all night," he said, "but she won't answer." I told him to stay inside while I searched the area. I spent the next hour combing through the woods around the cabin, calling out, looking for any sign of tracks. But the fresh snow had covered everything. When I came back, the man was standing outside, staring into the trees. "She's out there," he whispered. "I can hear her." I listened. Wind, trees creaking. Nothing else. "Sir, I think you should come back to the station with me. We'll organize a proper search party." He didn't move. "Do you hear that?" Then I did hear something. Faint. A child's voice, singing. It sounded like it was coming from deeper in the woods. The man started walking toward it. I grabbed his arm. "Wait, let me check it out first." I followed the sound, my flashlight cutting through the darkening woods. The singing got louder, clearer. It was definitely a little girl. Then I saw her. She stood between 2 trees, wearing a blue coat, her blonde hair covered in snow. She had her back to me. "Hey," I called out, "are you okay?" She stopped singing but didn't turn around. I got closer. "Your grandfather's looking for you. He's been really worried." She still didn't move. I walked around to see her face. She was smiling, but her skin was pale, too pale, and her lips were blue. "How long have you been out here?" I asked, pulling off my jacket to wrap around her. She looked up at me with empty eyes. "I've been waiting." Waiting for what? For Grandpa. Something about the way she said it made my blood run cold. I took her hand to lead her back. Her skin was like ice. Not just cold, frozen solid. When we got back to the cabin, the door was open. I called out for the man. No answer. I went inside. The cabin was freezing. The fire had gone out. And sitting in a chair by the window was the man. Dead. He'd been dead for a while. His body was stiff, frozen. He'd probably died the night before, maybe from a heart attack or hypothermia. I turned around. The girl was standing in the doorway, still smiling. "He wouldn't come with me," she said softly. So I had to wait. I stumbled backward. "Who are you?" "I've been waiting a long time," she said. "A lot of people get lost up here. But they don't like to be alone." I ran. I didn't look back. I just ran through the snow, back down the trail, my radio crackling as I called for backup. When the team arrived the next morning, they found the man's body. But there was no sign of any girl, no footprints except mine, no blue coat, nothing. They checked the records. The man had come up alone. He'd never mentioned a granddaughter. He didn't have any family at all. But when they searched the woods behind the cabin, They found something. A small grave marker, almost completely buried in snow. It was old, from the 1940s. The name on it, Emily Fletcher. Age 10. I don't work that section of the park anymore. I requested a transfer. My name is Rachel, and I'm a social worker in rural Montana. Part of my job is doing home visits to check on elderly people living alone during harsh winters. Last December, I had an experience that made me question everything I thought I knew. I was assigned to visit a woman named Mrs. Patterson. She was 78, lived by herself in a farmhouse about 15 miles outside of town. Her neighbor had called our office saying she hadn't seen Mrs. Patterson in over a week, which was unusual. I drove out there on a gray afternoon. The temperature was dropping fast, and weather reports said a big storm was coming that night. I needed to make this quick. The farmhouse was old, but well maintained. Smoke came from the chimney, which was a good sign. I knocked on the door and waited. Mrs. Patterson answered. She was small, frail, but her eyes were sharp. She seemed surprised to see me. I'm from social services, I explained. Your neighbor was worried about you. She smiled. That's sweet of Linda, but I'm perfectly fine. Just been staying inside because of the cold. I asked if I could come in and do a quick check, just standard procedure. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The house was warm, the fire was roaring, and every lamp was on. It felt almost suffocating. Can I get you some tea? She offered. No, thank you. I just need to ask a few questions. We sat in her living room. I went through my checklist. Did she have enough food, medications, heating? Was she in any pain? She answered everything calmly. Everything seemed normal. Then I noticed the photographs on the mantel. Family photos, but in every single one there was a person whose face had been scratched out. Violently, like someone had taken a knife to them. Mrs. Patterson, who's in these photos? Her smile faded. My son. Why are his faces scratched out? She stood up abruptly. I think you should leave now. The storm's coming. I glanced outside. She was right. Snow had started falling heavily. But something felt wrong. I couldn't leave yet. Mrs. Patterson, is there something you need to tell me? Are you in some kind of danger? She walked to the window and stared out at the snow. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. He comes back every winter. Who does? My son. Thomas. He died 15 years ago, froze to death in a car accident just down the road. She turned to face me. But every winter when it gets cold enough, he comes home. I didn't know what to say. I assumed she was confused, maybe early dementia. Mrs. Patterson, I think maybe. He's not kind anymore, she interrupted. Death changed him. He blames me for the accident, says I should have stopped him from driving that night. And every winter he comes back to remind me. The lights flickered. You need to leave, she said urgently. Right now, before it gets dark. I can't leave you here alone if... A loud bang came from upstairs, like something heavy had fallen. Mrs. Patterson's face went white. He's already here. My training told me this was likely a mental health episode, but the fear in her eyes seemed real. Too real. Is someone else in this house? I asked. She didn't answer. She just backed away from the stairs, shaking. I heard footsteps above us, slow, deliberate footsteps moving across the second floor. Mrs. Patterson, who's up there? I told you. Thomas. The footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. I could see the landing from where I stood. Nothing was there. But I felt it, something watching us from the darkness. Then I heard breathing. Heavy, rattling breaths, like someone who'd been out in the cold too long. Mom, a voice called from upstairs. Male, cold, angry. Why is she here? I grabbed my phone to call the police. No signal. Mrs. Patterson clutched my arm. Don't go upstairs. Whatever you do, don't go up there. The footsteps started again, coming down the stairs, one step at a time. I could see the stairs from where we stood, but I couldn't see anyone on them. just footsteps, getting closer. Mrs. Patterson pulled me toward the back door. "We have to hide. The shed. He can't get in the shed." We ran outside into the blizzard. The cold was brutal. We struggled through knee-deep snow to a small shed behind the house. She pulled out a key with shaking hands and unlocked it. Inside were blankets, a small heater, and supplies. This wasn't the first time she'd hidden here. "How long does this usually last?" I asked. "Until morning. When the sun comes up, he leaves." We sat in that freezing shed for hours. I tried my phone repeatedly. Nothing. Through the small window, I could see the farmhouse. Every light was on, and I swear I saw a figure moving past the windows, searching. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the snow outside the shed, circling. The door handle rattled. "Mom," the voice said, "I know you're in there. Just let me in. I'm so cold." Mrs. Patterson held my hand so tight it hurt. We didn't make a sound. When dawn finally broke, everything stopped. The footsteps, the voice, everything. We went back inside. The house was exactly as we'd left it. But upstairs, in what must have been Thomas's old room, every drawer was open, closet door hanging wide, like someone had been looking for something. And on the bed was a wet puddle of melted snow still dripping onto the floor. I got Mrs. Patterson out of there that morning, put her in a temporary care facility in town. She refused to go back to that house. The county eventually sold it. The new owners lasted one winter before they moved out, said they heard footsteps, voices, found wet snow in the upstairs bedroom even though all the windows were sealed.